Let's now take a look at what's happening in the workplace. And the New South Wales Premier's mandate requiring public service workers to return to the office highlights a wider trend among employers, with some estimates that within 2 years, well, the work from home phenomenon may well be over. All right, caught up earlier to talk about that with Joydeep from People and Culture Strategies.
I think it's very timely when we look at the developments in this space over the last few months. We know the Premier of New South Wales issued a mandate in respect of all New South Wales public service workers, saying that the majority of their time needs to be in the office. We know that a lot of other employers have sort of said, look, enough's enough in terms of the working from home thing. And many employers, certainly a lot of organisations we're working with, have said, look, we are rapidly moving back to a full return of all of our people to the office. So the interesting thing I find about this survey is that the narrative 12 months ago around this from CEOs and business leaders was a lot more around either we're waiting to see what happens, or we're going to play things by ear, or things are kind of working for us okay, or some were even saying, look, working from home's here to stay. It's our new way of working. So I'm not surprised that there has been this significant shift where business leaders, and perhaps being a little bit opportunistic, some might say, in terms of the world circumstance, the economic circumstance, in saying, look, we're going to do this and it's going to happen quickly.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because some employers see this as a cost-saving measure. Of course, you don't have to spend so much if you've got all your employees in the office. But then, of course, we've spoken about also the possible effect on productivity. What's the view from recruiters?
Yeah, this has been unsurprising, again, some might say, but interesting that given that there are still a significant number of employers who are embracing the work from home, some indeed still doing the work from anywhere concept that we have spoken about before, employees, candidates who are looking for that as being a primary determinant or critical factor as to where they might choose to work as their next move, or a place where they might choose to work at some stage in their career, will certainly have access to employers who will give them that particular opportunity. So recruiters are saying, look, if you're going to be one of the businesses that say, look, we're going to treat working from home as a thing of the past, then you may find it difficult to attract people, and you may even find that it's difficult to retain people if people have, if your staff have become quite acclimatised and used to working from home as part of their ordinary working arrangements. Now, I think whether or not this actually plays out in that particular way will, of course, be a numbers game. Employees will have to face the realities of how likely is it that even if an employer is saying, well, for now, you can work from home a couple of days a week, will they fall into line with the majority of other employers, and that's certainly my prediction, who will say, look, working from home is going to be an exception rather than the norm, as it always has been pre-pandemic. So I don't necessarily agree with the assessment by recruiters that this is going to be something that employers choose to do at their peril.
What trends are we seeing at the moment, do you know, Joydeep, just as far as particularly employees are concerned, whether they're more likely to return to the office or whether they still like to have that flexibility, if you like, of working from home?
I think what we're seeing is that those employers who are still allowing a certain amount of work from home are making it the minority of working time. So that's definitely been a pronounced trend in the last 6 to 9 months. Those employers that are still doing that are introducing tighter measures and metrics in terms of ensuring that any work from home is delivering at the same levels of productivity as let's call them in-office days or in primary or at primary place of work days. So the level of rigour around how employers are approaching this and how managers and leaders within those organisations are asked to manage it and monitor it has definitely shifted. So the messaging, I think, from employers to employees around it is, look, we'll allow you a transitional period, but be aware that in this transitional period, the accountability that you're going to have is going to be greater. And I think that's fair, because while I'm not suggesting that the vast majority of employees would be abusing that as a privilege, we certainly know that the productivity impact of working from home, as much as there might be arguments both ways, on balance, is not going to be the same, and certainly not in the same context or the same outputs when you factor in the cultural issues, the camaraderie issues, the collaboration issues as part of an overall assessment of productivity and effectiveness.
Do we know if this falls into demographic lines in that perhaps younger employees like that flexibility? They want to work from home, whereas perhaps older employees who, well, it's still a bit of a novel thing, I guess, are much happier to work in the office.
It's a really interesting point, Andrew, because in my experience and observation, actually some of the employees who are keener, let's assume that they've started or entered the workforce in that period of 2020, 21, etc. So all they have known or may have known in those first few years was this, if at best hybrid working or even entirely working from home. A lot of that demographic is actually quite keen and embracing the full return to the office because that's the novelty for them. The demographic that tends to be reluctant to want to go back to the office is usually the ones who've probably spent a significant period of their working time already working in the office. They might have outside responsibilities, whether it's with kids, families, carers, responsibilities, whatever else. And they're the ones who are sort of saying, well, look, I can actually be more productive by integrating those things into my day and having a bit more flexibility, and I'm getting my work done, so why can't this continue? So the demographic question is actually interesting and not necessarily playing out as most people would think, where the perception is that the younger generation, in inverted commas, are going to be far less likely to want to work from an office or work from a place 5 days a week.
And do we know how this is all translating just in terms of the economy? And I guess that goes to that uncertainty.
Yeah, it is uncertain. Employers, I do feel, are mindful that if they are under pressure and they can't make the representations and assurances to their staff around job certainty and job security, that they will err on the side of an environment and an infrastructure or ecosystem that they consider to be most effective and conducive for them being successful. And for a lot of leaders and decision makers, they will have the view that the whole working from home thing was something that was forced on them as a result of the pandemic. It was not something that was on the cards for them as something that they were going to embrace as part of what their organisation was going to look like or how people would be working in their organisation. It was very much driven by the circumstances of the pandemic. And that was a point in time. And that point in time has certainly shifted radically in the last 18 to 24 months. And a lot of employers are going to say, particularly in these troubled times, we're going to go back to what works best. And that's people working from their primary place of work, collaborating, having the visibility, line managers managing more directly, and all of those other things.